Today on Hot Thai Kitchen, we are making spicy shrimp cakes. สวัสดีค่ะ Welcome to Hot Thai Kitchen. The end of the year is coming up real fast, so today I'm going to share with you a great appetizer for your Christmas or New Year's party or whatever you're doing. We're making something called Tod Man Gung, which is our shrimp cake. However, this isn't quite the traditional shrimp cake recipe. I'm doing a hybrid recipe between our traditional fish cake and shrimp cake, combining the best of both worlds. So you'll see how when we go to make it. But first, here's your Thai lesson. Tod means to deep fry. Man. It has several meanings, but I think the intended meaning for this recipe is fatty, which would make sense because the original shrimp cake recipe has a lot of pork fat in it. And finally, gung, you may already know, means shrimp. And so let's take a look at our ingredients. 300 grams of peeled and deveined shrimp, 1 egg, 3 tablespoons of red curry paste. You can use store-bought paste or make your own. You can use a little less if you want it less spicy. A 1/4 cup of coconut milk, about 1 teaspoon of fish sauce, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 3 kaffir lime leaves, center rib removed, then very thinly julienned. 1/2 cup of chopped string beans. You can also use a combination of corn and string beans, which is what I'm doing. About 2 cups of panko or Japanese-style breadcrumbs. So the flavor combination of the red curry paste, the kaffir lime leaves, and the string beans are traditional of our fish cakes, or our Tod Man Pla. Now, while our fish cakes are delicious, they look like this, and they're not the prettiest thing to serve at a party. Our shrimp cakes, on the other hand, are beautiful because they're breaded in breadcrumbs, and they taste good even after they've come down to room temperature, but the flavor isn't quite as interesting as the fish cakes, so I'm doing shrimp cakes but borrowing the flavors from our fish cakes. So the first thing we need to do is to go and saute our curry paste. So we're going to first saute our curry paste. Now, this is my trick. It's not traditional. Most of the time in Thailand, they just put in the raw curry paste into the mix. But we know that sauteing the paste, like toasting spices, blooms up the flavor. So we're going to do that. So we're going to start with a 1/4 cup of coconut milk. We're going to bring that to a simmer and reduce it down by about half just to get rid of the excess liquid so it doesn't make our mixture too runny. And the coconut milk is also my trick. It's not very traditional, but the traditional recipe uses about 30% lard, which is way more pork fat than I'm willing to eat. So I'm replacing pork fat with coconut fat because the fat helps tenderize the mixture a little bit and it makes the texture a little bit nicer and soft. So, you know, this is healthier. So just gonna bring it to a boil and let it reduce a little bit. And we're going in with our curry paste. And we're not trying to separate the coconut oil here like when we make curry. We're just cooking the curry paste and reducing excess liquid. So just keep cooking it until it becomes a thick paste. So now that our curry paste has cooled down, we're going to mix everything together in the bowl. So we've got here our curry paste that's cooled down a bit. String beans and the corn. Now the string beans are quite traditional. The corn isn't. The corn is my thing because I like corn, so I added it. But you can just do string beans. Now the string beans are actually quite important in the sense that it's a crunch element. It'll add textural variety, which makes a difference in something that's quite dense, such as the shrimp cake. The kaffir lime leaves. Now I'm going to stress that you have to slice them very, very thinly because these leaves are tough. They don't soften throughout the cooking process. And so unless you cut it very finely, it's kind of uncomfortable to eat. And then we're going to go in with the sugar and then fish sauce. Now, fish sauce, I'm using a teaspoon. This is going to depend on how salty your curry paste is. You may need a little bit less, you may need a little bit more. So for the first time you make it, I recommend mixing everything up, including the shrimp, cook up a little bit of the batter, and then taste it to see how salty it is to begin with, see if you need to add fish sauce, and if so, how much, so on and so forth. Okay, so now that we've got everything, we're going to go and grind our shrimp. And I didn't want to grind the shrimp until the last minute because I want to keep the shrimp very, very cold in the fridge. So add our shrimp into here, and I'm using this dinky little food processor. Traditionally, before the age of technology, they used to pound the shrimp using mortar and pestle, believe it or not. And then 1 egg in there, and the egg is going to lighten up the texture, and it's also, the fat from the yolk is going to add some richness to the mixture, and it will tenderize the mixture a little bit. So I need to talk about this because it could mess up your recipe. It's best to use fresh shrimp for this because frozen shrimp always come with a layer of ice glaze around them. And when you thaw, this excess water is going to make your mixture too runny and you won't be able to form them, which I discovered the hard way. So if you absolutely have to use frozen shrimp, take them out and thaw them a day ahead of time, drain them off, and lay them on a tray with lots of paper towels so they dry off. Leave them in the fridge overnight uncovered so that the water around the shrimp evaporates overnight, and then you'll be able to use it the next day. Make sure that you leave that tray of shrimp on the bottom shelf of the fridge and away from your other food to prevent cross-contamination. Another important point, the recipe calls for 300 grams of shrimp. If you're buying frozen, make sure you buy at least 1 pound because that pound may include the weight of the ice glaze, which means once you thaw it, you'll end up with less shrimp. And the same applies if you're buying shell-on fresh shrimp. Remember to account for the weight of the shells. So for the dipping sauce, since the shrimp cakes are primarily salty and spicy, we're going to make a sweet and sour dipping sauce so it can balance it all out. So let's take a look at our ingredients. 1/4 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of white vinegar, 1 clove of garlic, 1 spur chili or prik chi fa chopped into small pieces. You can also use any other large red chili pepper, a pinch of salt, 1 Thai chili, this is optional in case you want to make it extra spicy, 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground peanuts, and this is also optional. Okay, first we're going to take your chilies and your garlic and pound it all down. So what we're doing, we're pretty much juicing it so the chilies don't remain in a big chunk. It gets incorporated into the dipping sauce. Just gonna pound it down into a paste. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking for here, a rough paste. And now we're gonna add all this into our pot. We're gonna add our sugar into this, our little pinch of salt, and then our vinegar. Since there's a lot of chili juice in here, I'm gonna pour it in here. That way I don't waste any chili bits. So we're just gonna bring this to a simmer and let it simmer for about 2 to 3 minutes. What we want here is to cook the garlic, cook everything else, but more importantly to get it to the consistency that we need, which is a syrupy consistency. Now the problem is, this when it's hot will always be runnier than it is when it's cold. So for this amount of time, for this amount of stuff, it's gonna take 2 to 3 minutes of simmering. If you are making more, you're not sure, you can always test the consistency by putting a little bit of it into a ramekin, stick the ramekin in the freezer, and once it's cooled down, just to check to see how thick it is now. So now that our dipping sauce is ready to go, we're going to get ready to shape our shrimp cakes so we can fry them. Now to be efficient, you want to portion them all out first before you shape and bread them. Okay, so good portioning tool is one of these scoops right here. If you don't have it, you can also use a tablespoon because we're going to need about a tablespoon worth of material, of substance, of shrimp cake. So now we're ready to shape them. Now to prevent these from sticking to your hands, you always want to have a little water bowl so you can wet your hands, and that'll be the non-stick trick. Now traditionally, these are made into patties, but I'm going to do balls because balls are cuter for parties. And if you're going to do balls, just roll them into ball shape-ish. Don't do any bigger than that, because if you make bigger balls than that, it'll have a hard time cooking and the outside will burn by the time you cook the inside. If you want bigger pieces, make them into patties. And in fact, in Thailand, they sometimes like to poke a hole in the middle and make them like little donuts. But we're gonna do balls, but you can do whatever you want. Drop them in there. Okay, and now that you've maxed out the surface a little bit, we're going to toss them into the breadcrumbs using this spoon so you don't get your hands sticky again. Oil at 350. It's quite important that you keep the temperature consistent, because if it's too hot, it'll start to burn the outside before the inside cooks, and if it's too cold, it'll start absorbing oil too much. If you drop something and it's not looking like, it's not bubbling very excitedly, it's bubbling just kind of lazily, your oil is too cold. A thermometer really helps. If you keep it somewhere between 325 to 375, hovering around there, you're not going to get it exactly 350 every time. You should be okay. So these will take a few minutes. It's hard to say. I've never actually timed it, but just a few minutes. But you can tell based on just the color. We're really going by the color of this at this point. If the color of the panko is done and the inside of it is not done, that means the pieces are too big. Either that or the oil is too hot. Now remember too that because the shrimp mixture has curry paste mixed into it, it's going to be a little darker to begin with. So we're not really looking for golden brown, we're looking for a nice brown color on these. And they're gonna puff up a lot bigger than they normally are. And they're gonna start to crack a little bit. Take these out. These look done to me. And now if you're not sure if they're done, take them out and let them cool, because residual heating will keep them cooking. Then cut one open. So don't cut them open as soon as you take them out of the pan. Cut them open after they've shrunken back to their original size, and then you can see if it's not cooked in the inside, that means you have some adjusting to do. So our shrimp balls are done. Here's what it looks like on the inside. Okay, and so the good thing about these is they also reheat really well. So if you need to take them to somebody else's house for a party, just put them in the oven at 400 degrees, 6 to 8 minutes should do it. And they'll taste almost as good as when they're freshly fried. So I'm just gonna finish our dipping sauce here with some peanuts that's been roasted and crushed. And I'm just gonna stir that in, and it just adds some nuttiness. You don't have to. Finish it off with some extra cilantro. Then we're gonna dish it into our little sauce bowl here. And I saved just enough cilantro so I can do ding, 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 that final little bit, just enough. Okay, so that's going on here. Now I've used, for a good color contrast, I've used banana leaves, which you can find frozen in Asian grocery stores. Also, it stops them from rolling around, so it serves double purpose. Just want to pile them up on here. And the good thing about these is they stay hot for a really long time. It's a good thing because for a party, you want them to stay hot for a long time. And that's it. That is our Thot Man Gung, or our Christmas special shrimp appetizer. Hope you get a chance to make this at your party. And for the full written recipe, you can visit hotthaikitchen.com. And if you like the show, please click to subscribe. And I will see you next time for your next delicious Thai meal.